Hello CIS18A students. In this video, I want to talk about your course project for Java programming. The course project module, you can find that on the bottom of your Canvas course page. Then you would go ahead and click the first page. I will include the video on this page, but you will find objectives for the course project. Also, you can download the course project document or view it within the page. For this course project, you are going to have to select one of the three options. Once you have selected the options, then you would begin working on creating the documentation, which is part 1, writing the program and submitting the program, which is part 2, and completing the course evaluation and the Eportfolio, which is part 3. So to begin, I want to go over the project options and the requirement. In the project options, we have the business program is option 1. This is a program where you will have to write in Java that would allow the user to place an order for goods or services and set an appointment for delivery of goods or services. An example of this could be a grocery store online, something like could be Instacart, or could be a mobile pet spa, a mobile car detailer, or some type of service that would be provided by a company or individuals. So here are some examples, but you're welcome to select from these or come up with your own. Now, importantly, that when you look at to build this program, remember that they're placing the order, so making sure that you're thinking about implementing an array of the type of products or services that the company or the business is offering. Also, we need to allow the user or the customer to select an appointment for the delivery of goods or services. Now, the bullets you will find under option 1, it describes how the program should flow. It should prompt the user to select products and services and appointment for delivery. And also, the program should display the user selection on screen. So once they have selected the products or the service, we want to be able to display the summary of their selection. If there is price for products, you wanted to include that for the subtotal, tax, discount, anything that you like to add. The program should also output the appointment and the purchase summary in a text file, like a receipt. The program should also contain some technical components, such as documenting your code, using comments, using appropriate data types, variables, classes, etc. So make sure that when you write your Java program, take a look at the technical requirements and incorporate those in your program so you don't miss any points. Now, if you decided to include graphical user interface, you can integrate UI using Swing, which we'll be covering very soon. That will be an extra 20 points. It can be added to the deficient area of the project, or it can be added to other assignments. For option 2, if you decided to choose option 2, this is a program for a public community garden at Moreno Valley College. The user can register and schedule an appointment to visit the garden based on the operational hours, and the hours are provided there. And during each of the appointment, with the allocated time, the customers or the patrons can select or pick fresh fruit and vegetables at no cost. So like the option 1, if you're using Swing to integrate graphical user interface, you can actually use Date Picker for the calendar portion of your project. And the bullet lists how the program should flow, what kind of components you need in the program. Remember that this program will require the user to register their general information and their contact information. So make sure that you would incorporate user input and store those input or even validate those input for the general registration. Then it also allows the user to set an appointment for the visit. And with this program, we wanted to display what they have selected as appointment and also display their summary of their registered information. We also should incorporate some kind of donation program in which businesses or users can actually donate various goods, money, or even things like labor to support the community garden as it is publicly provided. Remember to follow the technical requirements as listed there. Just like the option 1, you will be required to incorporate the same technical requirements, and they are weighted differently for points. So I will use a rubric to be able to grade your project and give you comments as feedback. So at the end of the course, once you receive your grades and also your project grade, you can take a look at these comments that I include in the grading and possibly improve your program for future use. For option 3, this is a poker game, and if you choose this option, you are to write a program for Texas Hold'em poker. If you're not familiar with the game rules, you can visit the link that's provided on page 3 and be able to take a look at how the game is played. So the program should display the dealt player hands, flops, river, and turn. And at the end of the game, we also want to display the dealer hand to show whether the user wins or loses. There should be different rounds in which the user can wage bets and make a decision based on the outcome of their cards. So consider that and consider the process that you need to incorporate to get the program to work accordingly. And just like the other 2 options, you are required to include the technical components like comments, classes, variables, array, and various components will be weighted differently to total up to 200 points. If you incorporate graphical user interface, you can earn 20 points. And I do not expect you to have, face cards to be illustrated in the graphical user interface. You can incorporate menu options, a way that they can enter their wager into a text box. That will be okay if you decided to wanted to pursue UI for your program. And for the project submission, it's broken into 3 parts. In part 1, you're required to compose 2 documents. One document is going to entail your program goals, functionality, and who is your target audience. And it needs to identify the strength and the weakness of your program. Why is your program important, or why should someone download and use your program? And what is the deficient area? What's the weakness in your program? And how can other people or yourself improve the program in the future? So the summary of your program should be about 1 page, double space. The second document for part 1 is going to be a pseudocode. And pseudocode cannot be code itself. It needs to list from start to finish the processes and the operations of your program. If you're using loops or control statement, you need to include the branching, input, output, and all operations that is necessary for your program to work. And we don't need to have a complete pseudocode to start, but as you go through and think about your program, you want to add it so that way you can outline a complete program. So I provided a link on how to write pseudocode. I noticed that there are some video tutorials out there, one from Khan Academy and others. So you can reference those if you haven't learned how to write proper pseudocode. So there will be 2 documents that needs to be submitted for part 1. One will be your program summary. 2, the second document will be the pseudocode. Now for part 2, this is worth 200 points. And all of these parts are due in week 6 on the last day of your class, which is February 11th. In part 2, you are to submit your Java files in a zip folder, and before you submit, make sure you test your program, make sure that you debug and fix the issue. Now in the case where if your program has some hiccups or it still have some issues, I want you to submit your program anyway, so that way you can earn some credit. But ideally, we want to have a completely working program for the submission. You should be submitting multiple Java files as the project requires that you incorporate custom packages so you can build your own packages, and we'll talk about packages in the next week. So the programming part is 200 points, and I would use the rubric that specify each of the technical component when I grade your Java files. In part 3, this is worth 50 points, and you are to complete a project evaluation. The link is provided on the page, so you simply fill out the Google form. Once you click submit, make sure you take a screen capture of it and submit it for the first part of part 3, the number 1 of part 3. So your project evaluation, your self-evaluation needs to be completed in order for me to incorporate that with the grading. I want you to self-assess and see how well you did on your project, what's other areas that you need to expand on, what kind of things you need to improve for your future project in other classes. The second part of part 3 is to create an ePortfolio using Google Sites. I included the videos on the page, and also using the link you would have the simple instructions on how to access Google Sites. The Google site will link to your Google account. So after you edit the site and make it look appealing and have your project components added to your site, you need to publish it. I will not be able to see it if you don't publish it. So make sure that you click publish when you're done. And on your portfolio, you should include the documentation that you created for part 1 and also the pseudocode from part 1. If you're using GitHub, which is not required for this project, to store your source code and also to maintain your versions, you can provide a URL on your ePortfolio on the Google site of your GitHub repository. And if you wanted to add anything else, a picture of your code, things like that for your ePortfolio, that will be great. The reason why we're using ePortfolio is I want you to start thinking about how you would be able to publish your work or show your work so employers and other businesses can see what you are doing. You can use this as a digital format to illustrate the progress for your school coursework, your projects, your personal projects that you've done, and it's a good way to really market yourself for today's job place. So part 3 entails 2 things. The first is the self-evaluation from the survey for your project. The second is your ePortfolio on Google site, and don't forget to publish it. And in Canvas, when you submit your ePortfolio URL, you can click on the URL tab and paste in the URL. Make sure that we test it with different browser to see that it's properly open. I did receive some of the students submitted the URL and it's not working because they didn't publish it, or it was the wrong URL. So make sure that we check it out before we submit that. And that would be all 3 parts for your course project. I'm available during office hours if you have questions or concern throughout the next few weeks. If you want me to check out some of the things that you're working on, and if you can't join the office hours, or if you don't want to make appointments, please feel free to contact me via Canvas message or email. I will be happy to take a look at what you're working on, give you some feedback before you finalize your project. And please contact me if you have any questions about other materials and resources. And this concludes my video for CIS18A course project.